I was trying to figure out whether we were going to go by my watch or Katie's, so Katie said I should get up here. I want to welcome you to the third annual Charlotte Zolotow celebration. I'm Jack Keene, the Associate Dean Emeritus of the School of Education, and I'm standing in for Dean Charles Reed, who could not be with us tonight. So on behalf of Dean Reed, the School of Education faculty, staff, and students, I would like to welcome all of you to this third annual Charlotte Zolotow celebration. Now, as I said, this is the third opportunity that we have been given to honor Charlotte and to recognize authors of the best text in the best picture books to be published in the United States in the preceding year. Not only do we get the pleasure of honoring the award winners, but we are twice blessed by having Jean Craighead George speak to us. And although I haven't read all of the over 100 books that she has read, I have read many of them. And I will read more. In fact, there is one that I need desperately to read: How to Talk to Your Dog. I need to read that book, maybe to my own dogs. I'm thinking at about 3 in the morning. This is also an occasion for me to express the great pride that all of us have in the School of Education and in the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and the Friends of the CCBC that we take in our having the pleasure to work with Jenny Moore Cruz, Director of the Cooperative Children's Book Center, and her colleagues, Katie Horning and Megan Schlesman. Last year, Dean Reed made mention of the fact that there were 3 children's books heading the New York Times bestseller list at the time of this celebration. Of course, shortly thereafter, the New York Times decided to stop that by creating a separate children's bestseller list. I'm still not sure whether that was a wise decision. The New York Times list is only good for getting 30% off the jacket price at the better bookstores. The list that I really use is the annual CCB Choices list. It guides my decisions about what to read, what to recommend, and what to use in children's literature classes. I'd like to express our appreciation to all of the folks who have helped make this event possible. We have the pleasure of sharing the award presentation and Jean George Head Craig's lecture with the world tonight via live webcast. Anyone, anywhere in the world, can access what we are doing tonight. And incidentally, the past Charlotte Zolotow presentations are available in the webcast archives of the CCBC, and you can access that at their website, and they are wonderful to listen to and to view. I'd like to make a special welcome to all of you in cyberspace, including, I hope, Charlotte herself. For our ability to do this, we'd like to thank Chris Dowling of the Center for Instructional Materials and Computing and Clark Thompson of the Instructional Media Development Center. Both of them have done a lot of work to make what we do here accessible to a much wider audience. Last year, some of you will remember that the Zolotow Lecture launched the regional IBBY conference called Points of View. In attendance at that meeting was Carmen Diana Dearden of Venezuela, who had served as president of the International Board of Books for Young People, as well as chair of the Hans Christensen Andersen Award, a prestigious international award often referred to as the Nobel Prize of Children's Literature. Ms. Dearden was so enthralled with the Cooperative Children's Book Center and the work of the CCBC that she has sent 2 of her own staff members from Banco de Libro in Venezuela, who were especially selected to come to Madison for a week to see some of the work of the CCBC and other Wisconsin schools and libraries firsthand, Brenda Bayorin and Olga Garcia. I welcome both of you to our presentations tonight. There was an article published last week by the Times Britain, which detailed a project organized by The Word, London's Festival of Literature, sponsored by Encarta, the World English Dictionary, to determine the favorite words in the English language. The top 3 words were, in order, serendipity, quidditch, and love. It makes sense to me. I give you Katie Horning.
Bringing up props for later. Well, it's good to see, almost see, so many faces out there tonight. I want to bring you greetings on behalf of the Children's Book Center, Cooperative Children's Book Center, my colleagues Jenny Moore-Cruz and Megan Schliessman. These events were originally established to honor Charlotte Zolotow's career as both an editor and an author of children's picture books. There is a bit more about Charlotte Zolotow in your program, which explains her connection to UW-Madison, which she attended in the 1930s, and where she was a student of English professor Helen C. White, who was her mentor. This morning I spoke to Charlotte by telephone, and she sends her greetings across the miles as well. Before I turn things over to the chair of the Charlotte Zolotow Award Committee, I'd like to acknowledge a few people who are with us tonight. First, Crescent Dragon Wagon, the daughter of Charlotte Zolotow, who has traveled here from Eureka Springs, Arkansas, to be with us tonight. Welcome, Crescent. Many of you already know Crescent as an author in her own right, but in the past year, she has also established herself as quite a webmaster. And she's created a wonderfully detailed website devoted to her mother. And if you haven't had a chance to find it yet on the World Wide Web, it has a really easy to remember URL, which is www.charlottezolotow.com. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our friends in publishing who are here with us tonight. William Morris and Robert Warren from HarperCollins in New York, and Bonnie Verberg from the Blue Sky Press, an imprint of Scholastic from Los Angeles. And we'd also like to thank Trudy Barash and the staff of Canterbury Bookstore for arranging to have the author's books for sale for us this evening. And when you entered the Union Theater, you no doubt noticed a table staffed by friends of the CCBC, and we can't thank the friends enough for all the support they give to the Charlotte Zolotow Award and Lecture. So if you didn't get a chance yet to stop by the Friends table on your way in, please look for them as you leave this evening. And now I'm going to turn things over to Joan Throne, a professor from UW Green Bay, who so capably chaired last year's Charlotte Zolotow Award Committee. Joan?
Can you imagine a more delectable invitation than the one which arrives inviting you to serve as a member of the Charlotte Zolotow Award Selection Committee? The words, feeling as if they've been embossed in gold, seem to say, please join us for a year of very hard work. Reading picture books that have been published in the United States, considering the quality of their language, and exploring your conclusions with a small group of others who believe as passionately as you do that young children deserve wonderful words, compelling story, and the most imaginative reading experiences. who could resist returning an immediate and joyful yes? I would like to introduce the members of the Year 2000 Award Committee, and I would ask each member to stand. You've probably identified them already by their enormous smiles. This is happy work. Pat Bakula, retired librarian from Glendale, Wisconsin. Jerry Caperi and Tana Elias, librarians at the Madison Public Library. Ginny Moore Cruz, director of the Cooperative Children's Bookstore. And Katie Horning, ex officio member, who did all of the work of coordinating, orchestrating, and encouraging our efforts. What a pleasure it has been to serve with you. In his introduction to Worlds of Childhood, William Zinsser notes that literature for children has one great gift to bestow. It can, he claims, get into a reader's metabolism, a sense of the grandeur, the playfulness, and the plain narrative strength of the English language. He could have been thinking of our honor books as he wrote. Only after our work had been completed did I realize that both of this year's honor books not only offer children language that pleases the ear and tongue, but both rather directly invite them to consider the power of the word. Catherine the Great and her granddaughter, Sarah, both loved to write and talk and sing. Carrie Best shows us how affection and understanding flourish even when one side of the conversation takes place in English and the other in Russian. In the early blue of the morning that opens her story, we see Grandma's underpants on the clothesline, quote, as big as tents and as loud as 6 firecrackers. And we hear them shout in both languages, "Happy birthday to me." Best gives us a new word, the no present, for the occasion. And when the best no present turns out to be an exchange of language, Sarah's English for Catherine's Russian, we feel the deep satisfaction only exemplary narratives provide. The Zolotow Selection Committee would honor Carrie Best in firecracker language. 3 cheers indeed for Catherine the Great. Jules Pfeiffer writes in 2 languages as well, English and the language of domestic animals. His text is remarkably spare, his language patterns precise. The marvel for adults is surely in the delicious complexity of meaning that Pfeiffer conveys with each moo, oink, and meow. When the vet determines to, quote, get to the bottom of the mystery, when each successive page extends the number of deeps that are needed to imagine just where that bottom might be, light and delight strike readers at one and the same time. Just don't think that Pfeiffer is finished with you yet, for when you turn the final page, he is ready with the last word, a word that will set a new story in motion, one that is yours to imagine. The Zolotow Selection Committee would honor Jules Pfeiffer for the masterful interplay of language and story that engages all readers of Bark, George. His editor, Bill Morris, will accept the honor award on his behalf. Molly Bang crafted her story when Sophie gets angry, really, really angry, with an elegant simplicity. Straightforward, declarative sentences frame our understanding of Sophie's experience. The injustice of having to share, the complacency of furniture and parents, the volcanic nature of anger, the wide world's capacity for comfort. Against this carefully constructed ground, single words crumble against the edges of the page or erupt in brilliant shades of red, orange, and yellow, or flame across an entire double-page spread. If we must have words to share what we know and sense what we feel and imagine what we have yet to know and feel, Molly Bang gives them to us abundantly. Children and grown-ups find in her story a compelling recognition of the truth of who we are and an essential understanding that these true selves will be welcomed home into rooms with cats that purr, fathers who read seed catalogs, and puzzles carefully reassembled. We would have the grandeur, the playfulness, and the plain narrative strength of this book for ourselves and for the children we love. And we would give to Molly Bang the Zolotow Medal in grateful appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you. I mostly want to say 3 cheers to CCBC for their extraordinary work over many years. You're just a wonderful group of people who are doing some really thoughtful, wonderful work for children's books. I had mostly thought of words as the excuse to do pictures when I'm making my books. So I must say I was astounded and dumbfounded and still am to receive this. I thank you. I am completely delighted. Thank you.
We are pleased and honored to have Jean Craighead George with us this evening in Madison for the 3rd annual Charlotte Zolotow Lecture. As most of you know, over the course of several years, Ms. George has written outstanding books for children of all ages. She combines a passion for writing with an equal passion for science and the environment. She was raised in a family of naturalists, and she grew up exploring her own habitat along the Potomac River. Later, she graduated from Penn State University with a degree in science and literature. She has shared her home not only with her family, but with an astonishing array of animals, not all at once, mind you, many of whom she writes about in her book, There's a Tarantula in My Purse. She has traveled the world over researching the animals and the often endangered habitats in which they live. She is a writer who truly knows and loves what she writes about, and we honor her and respect her for that. And I know she has influenced not only children for whom she writes, but many adults, educators, librarians, writers, parents, and I suspect even policymakers. Ms. George continues to try new ways of storytelling. Julie of the Wolves, one of her many fiction books, won the Newbery Medal in 1973. It will soon be a musical as well as a motion picture. She writes ecological mysteries like The Case of the Missing Cutthroats, set in the Tetons of Wyoming, and a variety of really very fine nonfiction books, including the 13 Moon series and the One Day series. She now also has an audience of younger children, since she has teamed up with some wonderfully creative illustrators to produce delightful picture books. For example, Dear Katie, winter is here, and I have to admit my current favorite is also How to Talk to Your Dog. But tonight, she joins us to talk about words for the young. Please join me in welcoming Jean Craighead George.
Thank you, Patty. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and I do appreciate your asking me to this beautiful campus to honor the wonderful Charlotte Zolotow Award. And I thank all of you who've made it such a pleasant experience. Katie and Ginny and Jack and Patty. I want to talk about words for the young child. I've just begun doing picture books myself, and I'm intrigued with the difficulty and the beauty of them. Every culture uses special words to reach the young. They're evoked by the children themselves. The baby in the cradle inspires one kind of sound, the child in the playpen and the girl and boy at school another. These early words bond the child to the mother and the home and the neighborhood and the school. And as we adults use them, they connect us to the child. They're the most important sounds anyone hears. For we, like the birds and mammals, imprint at birth and through childhood. These early words are us, and they define us, so let them be good. I went to Times Square on New Year's Eve in 1999 to be with 2 million people cheering in the next millennium. And I was there for one other reason, to celebrate the outgoing century that made the written word for the child a new genre of literature. The event was storybook stuff with fireworks, cacophony, and shine. 3 years ago, words for the young child, just the words, were at last recognized as an art with the creation of the University of Wisconsin's Charlotte Zolotow Award. And we're here today to honor words for the young child. Congratulations to Molly Bang for when Sophie gets angry, really, really angry. Her words have reached the childhood emotions and soothes them with a child's love of nature. And to Carrie Best, 3 cheers for your honor book, 3 cheers for Catherine the Great. Good books for young don't just happen. They are lived, and lived not only by the writer, but the editors who select and publish them. And once in print, we all live them. How does one live in child's words when we writers, editors, teachers, and parents are adults? Let me show you by citing the best example I know. Charlotte Zolotow lives 20 minutes down the Sawmill River Parkway from me in New York. It is a good day when I make that drive to spend an afternoon and evening with her. She is surprising, provocative, and very funny. She can snatch a child event out of the merest of happenings, or spot a bad sentence or a perfect book while looking backwards through the mirror. She is both editor and writer and sees the world from both directions. I did not know Charlotte until she stopped going to Harper's office in the city. We were separated in the publishing industry by the culture gap at the time. Science and literature were enemies, and the artists did not mingle, despite Henry David Thoreau, who considered them one and the same. Then Bill Morris, a friend and HarperCollins vice president, and the dinosaur of children's book lovers, also saw science and literature as one. He introduced Charlotte and me at lunch one day. Over grilled salmon and creme brulee, he listened with satisfaction as we began to talk the same language. Literature was science, and science was literature. And how did we know? They were brought together in children's books, and that is where they stand today and make poetry. From that time on, I frequently visited 29 Elm Street, Hastings-on-the-Hudson, Charlotte's home, which we consider the last bastion for excellence in children's books, as well as the house where Words for the Young are lived. Once off the Sawmill River Parkway, I go west for about a mile and take a right on Elm Place. Kids are playing in the tree-lined streets. Parents are chatting on steps and sidewalks. Elm Place ends at the wooded aqueduct, so traffic is light. The house at 29 Elm Street is that livable 1940 American architecture, gray shingled, white trim, with a basement, 3 upper stories, a small backyard, and a porch that stretches across the entire front of the house. On a day last year, Charlotte welcomed me to the porch. A blue-flowered couch sat against the wall. Yellow chairs encircled a low table. Flowers hung in baskets under the porch eave, and above the railing a birdhouse swung. No birds nested in it. It is decorated with flowers and a painted door, a picture book birdhouse. Shading the porch is a magnificent sycamore. Twice a year, a man has to bore its roots out of Charlotte's underground water pipes. This is a big expense, but she would not consider cutting it down. The sycamore has character. Not only is it a volunteer, no one planted it, but it amuses her. It discovered her pipes and tapped in on them with special tree intelligence. Furthermore, it repays her for her work, for her water. Behind its huge 12-inch leaves, she can be private and yet live life on Elm Place. On the street, kids fight, siblings struggle to be alphas, and ingenuity motivates. Last year, a 9-year-old boy earned several dollars by printing park tickets and finding visitors before his mother stopped him. A protagonist? Well, of course. A different hero is the boy down the block who shovels snow from Charlotte's Walk. 91-year-old Sidney arrived on the porch that day. He's a neighbor, newspaper columnist, and a Zolotow family friend of 30 years. He sat down on a yellow chair and summarized the front page news for Charlotte, then asked her about an old friend who was not well. He made a few bitter remarks about a mutual acquaintance, and his business done, abruptly got up and crossed the street to his own house. Crotchety men make wonderful characters for children's books. When he departed, his next-door neighbor joined us briefly. She is a wife, mother, potter, and adopts extra children. She is also a white witch, a fact that brings sparkles to Charlotte's eyes. She told her friend, playwright and author Paul Zindel, about Susan's meetings in the full moon with her coven. And when Paul next came to visit, he beelined his way to Susan with the look of an author who has found a book. Susan departed, and a college professor at the end of the block joined us while keeping an eye on her children who were shooting baskets in the street. The professor's carpenter husband stopped by, keys in hand, to his car to see if Charlotte needed anything from the store. While we talked, children played hopscotch, tears welled up, conflicts flared, and were settled. America's children's books were happening on Elm Place as they had happened on the streets of Hannibal, Missouri, and in New York. Then friend Jean Snyder drove up. She parked and said hello to the boy who gave her one of the tickets last week. Her long years of association with Samuel Beckett plays that her husband directed sharpened her eye for drama. The 9-year-old is stuff the plays are made of. She laughed with him briefly. Jean and Charlotte share a passion for the theater, the ballet, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, and poetry. Many of Charlotte's edited and personally written children's books are linked to the emotions and humanity of the fine arts. Jean departed and Charlotte invited me inside. The hallway is floor-to-ceiling books, not just children's books, but books by known and little-known writers. Charlotte calls them the beautiful writers. The words for American's children's book must be written by beautiful writers. Charlotte's dining room is on the right as you enter 29 Elm Place. The long table that day was spread with a Charlotte Zolotow manuscript to be checked and rechecked. She is a perfectionist who, despite her failing eyesight, reads, rereads, and polishes every book, be it new or about to be reprinted. There is no excuse for a children's book not to be accurate. There is too much knowledge available today to pass on the wrong information to a child. On a sideboard in the dining room is a white rose in a slender blue vase. Charlotte cultivated it in her own garden. Books like Carrot Seed, one of Charlotte's favorites, is a first lesson in the empirical scientific method. Plant a seed and observe the results. As if to reaffirm this, botanical prints of flowers and vegetables decorate the dining room wall. She combined science and poetry. Off the kitchen porch at the back of the house is Charlotte's coveted garden. Blooming that day were the deep blue-violet thistles from Emily Dickinson's garden. A bird feeder hangs above the roses. The fighting, feeding, chirping birds are English sparrows and house finches. I tell Charlotte they are trash birds, pushing out our indigenous birds, and suggest that she put out thistle seeds to attract the beautiful goldfinches. That said, she takes a different course. She looks at the scrabby brown birds with greater kindness. She knows children identify with a disadvantage, even as they are at a disadvantage. From this feeling comes the books like The Twisted Tree that with love and nurturing became the beautiful Christmas tree. Of course, she still is feeding those unattractive birds and finches, but something is developing there. Charlotte's living room is on the floor left as you enter. Flowers are always on the mantel and tables. Each vase of blossoms is beautifully arranged with the freedom Charlotte feels the flowers, authors, and illustrators must have. Children's books decorate the wall. Children's illustrations decorate the wall. 2 are elegant woodcuts of flowers. The painting behind the blue couch is a marvelous lumbering Ben Schechter bear. The illustrations above the stairs are Arnold Lobel's drawings and paintings. In the center of the living room is a very large table with bamboo legs and usually covered with books. Her family wish she would get something more elegant, but she will not. The table has a story. It was rescued from what remained of a friend's house on Fire Island after a hurricane carried it away. Can a table be a protagonist in a children's book? Anything that evokes emotions is waiting for Charlotte to write a story about it. On the second floor of 29 Elm Place are Charlotte's bedroom, her office, and a guest room. Above on the third floor is the computer, belonging to this woman of words who until recently wouldn't give up the manual typewriter, shunned technology, and would rather hear the wind in her sycamore than you have mail. But she joined the new economy. Publishing is changing for better or for worse, and the computer is in the forefront. Despite her dislike for technology and her poor eyesight, she is learning to surf the internet. A phone call came in from Susan Hirschman while I was there. Susan worked with Ursula Nordstrom and Charlotte before she created her own brilliant Green Willow imprint. Charlotte's face shines when Susan calls. Not only did these two make and are still making children's literary history, but they both take inspiration from the life around them. Susan came visiting on the train when Crescent, who is here tonight, Charlotte's daughter, was young. She not only talked books with Charlotte, but played games with Crescent. Halloween was a favorite event. One year, Susan went as a tube of toothpaste, and Crescent went as a toothbrush. Humor and fun are for children. Charlotte lives it, and it lives around her house, and she publishes it. When Arlen Gossell of Yale published his 10-year study, Biographies of Child Development, the mental growth careers of 84 youngsters, the children's book editors were listening. A child is a complete entity, said Gossell. A 2-year-old is a very fine person of 2. He draws people with arms and legs attached to heads and is master of the word no. A 3-year-old knows fear of the dark and jealousy. A 4-year-old can ride a bike, fit square blocks in square holes, and draw people with bodies but no necks. And he can feel empathy. Whether it is a case of the chicken or the egg, Ursula Nordstrom, Charlotte Zolotow, Margaret McElderry, Susan Hirschman, and Elizabeth Riley, the great editors of the golden century of children's books, published works for the Gossell child, not for the adult to come. The verses of Lewis Carroll and Walter de la Mare and the moral tales of the 19th century and early 20th were books that looked toward adulthood, not to the child as he is. The incisive editors knew this and published books for children who are bad, good, lovers of dinosaurs, birds, mice, mud, flowers, dads, trains, monsters, even grandparents. The stuff of the stories that unfold on Elm's Place and in every street on America. Another scientist who influenced our understanding of children's literature is psychiatrist Morris Louis. In the late 50s, he published Infant Speech, a scientific study of the beginnings of language. He had listened to mother and child. Their dialect was babbling, rhythmic, repetitive, not only in English, but in all languages. In response came books with more natural words for the child. N.M. Bodecker wrote nonsense poems, and Dr. Seuss penned tumbled rhymes with wit. Dennis Lee used children's speech patterns and repetitive phrases to write catchy rhymes. Maurice Sendak tingled the childish spine with monsters and scary words. John Ciardi spoke to the young with a controlled vocabulary. Having found the right words for the young child, big ideas could be explored. Langston Hughes and Walter Dean Mayer used children's words to tell the story of race in America. And Charlotte dared to speak of hate right out loud. She gave full status to a boy who wanted a doll. Nancy Willard's William Blake Inn brought a great adult writer to children in the young child's medium, the picture book. At the same time, the scientists and poets were reaching children with their words. I became impressed with a study that demonstrated children learn best through objects they were familiar with. A key means nothing to a child who lives in a tent. A beautiful tree means nothing to a child in the Arctic. When a 1-year-old was given a baseball bat in a TV show and urged to say the word baseball bat, I was appalled by the teacher's ignorance. A bat is not part of a 1-year-old's experience. I told Charlotte about the incident, adding contemptuously that the child looked at the meaningless object and knocked it to the floor. Said I to Charlotte, how was he expected to learn about something he could not experience? Answered she, falling, falling, falling. And there they were, words about a baseball bat that a 1-year-old knew all about. Falling, falling, falling. Okay, I said to myself, I'm a naturalist. What words will bring diversity to the young child? They would not be falling, 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 or even bird, bee, worm, and grass. Then I learned that 5,000 children's books had been published last year and decided that covered the word diversity. But where were the words falling, falling, falling that would cover the concept of biodiversity? Last June, I went on my annual trip to Yellowstone National Park to watch wolves, bison, bears, coyotes, eagles, elks, mountain goats, mountain sheep, ground squirrels, badgers, and sandhill cranes, my understanding of biodiversity. In addition to the animals, there was a diversity of people. Watching wolves and bears with me were mechanics, naturalists, manufacturers, airplane makers, ranchers, photographers, and all races and creeds. Suddenly, 5,000 children's books were not enough. We had 13 billion to reach. The diversity of our society calls for more and more diverse words to reach more and more children. Is there a children's book for the child of a software programmer? Is there a book for the child of a Yellowstone geyser watcher? I'm intrigued with geyser watchers. This is a whole new world. Geyser watchers are a new phenomena. They plan their days to arrive at geysers in time to see them blow white and hot into the blue sky. These eruptions are going off almost every hour somewhere on the Yellowstone thermocline. They vary from gigantic Old Faithful to unnamed puffs and whistles on steep mountainsides. What will a book for a geyser watcher's child sound like? Maybe something like this. For the board book set, puffs and blows, siss and even booms. For the picture book child, the words will include clocks and timing, wooded trails and hot magma, and the bowels of the earth. For the chapter book reader, the words will have a plot, a boy discovering the newest geyser and becoming the hero of his group. But before we can pick the right words for a young child on any subject, knowledge of the subject must be part of the adult culture. Then it can be simplified. The Monarch Butterfly is an example of how a complicated discovery can be words for a young child. Not long ago, only a very few lepidopterists at learned universities were interested in the complicated ecology of butterflies. One of these was Dr. Fred Burkhardt at the University of Toronto. He observed that the butterfly departed on migration in fall, and he wanted to know where and why it went. He organized a program in which volunteers banded butterflies and released them to fly on their mysterious migration and off to their mysterious destination. As they were caught or died along the way, they would reveal a secret. People found the banded butterflies moving south. They sent the band numbers back to Dr. Urquhart in Toronto. He tracked them down year after year in a perfectly straight line to the edge of the Florida Peninsula. I joined the research team when it was well underway, but the mystery's still unsolved. For many years, my children and I captured, banded, and you're going to want to know how you band a butterfly. And you rub off the little scales on the wing and arrive at that chitin, which is tough as a fingernail. And on it you clamp a little Allard sticker that's very much like the ones used to be in the shopping on cans in the shops. And on it, it says, return to the University of Toronto, and is given a number. We found that they were going over the Gulf of Mexico, and returns came back from roads and meadows in Mexico. Finally, the migrant butterflies were located overwintering in the cypress trees and the lava mountains of Mexico. That was 30 years ago. Many of us wrote about this complicated life history of a monarch butterfly. But it didn't quite reach the youngest ones. But it happened. Words were found for the very young youngster by Sam Swope. Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go to Mexico. Falling, falling, falling. It can be done. I have a story which I still don't fully understand, and neither do the scientists, and therefore it's unable to be told to the very young. It is about the impossible, a friendly interaction between two predators, a grizzly bear mother and her two cubs, and a wolf. We will have to unlock the minds of the participants to get at the literary science of this event. It goes like this. 2 years ago, a mother bear and her cubs were swimming across a lake toward me in Yellowstone National Park. I was on a hillside above the lake with a crowd of other people who had come to watch the reintroduced wolves. The mother bear saw us, turned and swam back to shore. She climbed the grassy hill with her cubs at her side. Quietly, suddenly, they were joined by a yearling black wolf. Predator had met predator. The wolf wove and threaded his way through the wildflowers until he was in 3 feet of the cubs. Then he splayed his front paws on the ground in an invitation to come play. They did, and he turned and ran. They chased him. When he had lured them quite a distance, the mother grizzly bear ran between the wolf and her cubs and led her offspring back to the meadows. The wolf approached the cubs again. They dashed after him, tumbling in play. We gasped. The cubs stood up on their hind legs and fell over backwards and chased after the wolf again. The mother let them run just so far, then brought them back. After about a half of hour that she sat down and nursed them. The wolf sat down and watched. When the cubs were fed, the wolf lured them off again. The mother circled between them and led them back. The word reached visitors in the park that a wolf and a bear were interacting with a wolf was interacting with a grizzly bear and her mom and her cubs. An unheard of event. Wolf naturalists appeared. The geyser groupies stopped their trek to the next eruption, and the mechanic drove back to his home for a powerful video. He returned in time to film the unfathomable story of wolf and grizzly bear. By now, each of us on the hilltop was holding his breath. How was this going to end? Who would kill whom? Who would win the predator-predator confrontation? Just before sunset, the mother bear walked up to the wolf and swatted him. He was not hurt, but he got the message, turned, and trotted off. The bears walked slowly uphill into the forest. The drama was done. Nothing was concluded. With that encounter, there was something missing. This story for children needed a satisfactory beginning, middle, and end. What provoked the wolf to play in the first place? Why did the foursome spend hours at this? And finally, What did the paw say? Who is there to put these two predators together in a children's book? A Dennis Lee with his repetitive phrases, maybe. A Myra Cohn Livingston making a poetry of the universe, or a humanist who will see that enemies need each other. Perhaps it will be computer kids banging back and forth on the internet and turning out new age words about a grizzly bear and a wolf who size each other up to learn about their environment. Or wolves and bears will be so much a part of our culture once more that we'll have another Little Red Riding Hood. Perhaps some words like falling, 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 or gotta go, will tell the story beautifully and meaningfully. While we are discussing what is wrong with our schools in this election, the scientists have published research on the child's brain. And we're all instinctively and know that there are all kinds of minds, as this research has proven. Not just minds of A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3, but minds of the dreamers, the colorists, the scientists, minds that see the large picture and those that see the detail. Children's books must reach them all. And last spring, I discovered we had even published a book for a ferret. We've really made it. It would not get the Charlotte Zolotow Award, but certainly it would get the Sammy Pittenger Ferret Blue Ribbon. My granddaughters, Rebecca and Katie, share the home with a ferret named Sammy. He is free to leave his cage, race around the house, and play with the girls. He loves wine and will tip over and drink from an unattended glass. He is ecstatic when he can pop birthday balloons or run up trouser legs. Sometimes he will disappear into the wainscoting and not come out for days, even weeks. Last year, Twig, my daughter, and her husband, David, were forced to make a second bathroom for their teenagers. They could not wait for 2 hours for a shower anymore. The old bathroom was torn apart and the walls taken down. One morning, the carpenter came to Twig with a box of toys. I don't know how these got behind the walls, he said, but here are some teddy bears, blocks, 5 Barbie dolls. 2 of the Barbie dolls have been beheaded. A third has teeth mark in her neck. Now, who would do something like that? Sammy, Twig gasped. Months later, with the walls repaired and Twig sitting in a doctor's office, a nurse who was keeping order in the waiting room picked up the book, Barbie's Wedding Gown. Who needs this junk, she asked as she headed for the trash. Sammy, said Twig, reaching for the book. He would just eat it up, and he did. Today, as we struggle through the tremendous changes in publishing, as we try to keep our eye on our goals, the Charlotte Zolotow Award is a reminder that books for children can be excellent and inspiring and bestsellers too. We can imprint our children with the beautiful sounds of great and evolving languages because one thing never changes. A good storyteller is forever. I thank you for asking me to speak at this wonderful occasion, and thanks to all my friends and new friends at the University of Wisconsin. Thank you and good night.
Jean, thank you so much for a wonderful speech. I know tonight I'm going to be dreaming about ferrets and geyser groupies, and a very persistent sycamore tree on Elm Place. Maybe feeling a little out of place on Elm Place, who knows? I just have a couple of housekeeping items before we depart for the evening. First of all, I want to announce that next fall, the Charlotte Zolotow Lecture will be given by Robert Lipsyte, also in this place. And we don't have the exact date down yet, but do watch the CCBC website for more information, and we'll have that date out soon. I also want to let you know that Molly Bang, Carrie Best, and Jean George will all be delighted to sign books for any of you who have brought them with you or who have purchased books this evening from Canterbury booksellers. And what we're going to do is ask Molly and Carrie to also join us on stage at these tables, and we'll ask people to line up over on the left side. But please, I know there are some children in the audience, and since this is a school night and it's starting to get a little bit late, we will ask people to let children go to the head of the line to get books signed. And then one last thing I want to announce is that Molly Bang and Carrie Best will both be making a presentation reading from their Charlotte Zolotow Award books tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. at Mind Sparks Pooh Corner bookstore on the west side. So please let's have Molly and Carrie come up to the stage now, and I'd like to close the evening formally and thank you all for coming and hope you'll have a safe trip home. Good evening.